Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're going to be delving into the individuals or groups who continue to be active in our world. Whether they defied the odds, evaded justice, their reigns continue. And we're starting with mafias that remain in operation.
The Mafia remains active, thousands of members still, but they are hated by many for their extortion of so-called peso, protection money from businesses.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 mafias that are still active.
And then I'm going to look at those guys and said, hey, maybe we'd be better off taking a lower profile and not sticking out.
For this list, we'll be looking at the most powerful mafias and mafia-type organizations that are still operative today. Did you know these groups were still around? Number 10, the Dixie Mafia. A relative newcomer to the world of organized crime, the Dixie Mafia rose to prominence in the late 1960s.
Anything that made a dime, the Dixie Mafia was in it.
This deadly mafia network dominated until the FBI was called in to hunt them down.
Unlike other mafias, it's not an official organization, but more of a loose-knit gang of criminals, mostly white Southerners in the United States. While the Dixie Mafia was founded in Biloxi, Mississippi, they were known to operate throughout the entire American South.
What they were was a group of his handpicked from the years of 1962 to 1966 guys of 9 that he used to rob places, banks, jewelry stores, armories, any place that had big money.
Its former leader, Kirksey McCord Nix Jr., is currently serving life in prison, and many other members ended up behind bars too. The Mafia's influence has dwindled significantly since the 90s.
The Mississippi Gulf Coast was transformed. Clubs and backroom casinos were closed. Gambling was legalized. The financial source for the dark underbelly of crime shut down.
The Dixie Mafia just lost its vitality.
But some believe they're still around in a smaller capacity. Number 9, the Addams Family. Mafias aren't exclusive to Italy or the United States. In fact, most countries around the world have their own mafia-type criminal organization. One of the most powerful in the United Kingdom is the Addams Family.
We were tasked with combating those involved in the importation, wholesaling and the distribution of major quantities of drugs. Already at that stage, the Addams Family name was synonymous with that kind of crime.
Known officially as the Clerkenwell Crime Syndicate, this organization was formed back in the 1980s by brothers Terry, Tommy, and Patsy Addams. Like the Dixie Mafia, the Addams Family is not as big as it once was, and many key figures were imprisoned throughout the 90s and 2000s.
The police create a special task force, led by the National Crime Squad, designed to bring the three Addams brothers down at any cost.
However, they are allegedly still involved in drug trafficking and high-scale robberies, among other forms of organized crime.
We talk of gangs on the streets of London today. No, they're not gangs in this way. This was an old-school type of gang, and I don't think we'll see many, if any, like that anymore.
Number 8, the Russian Mafia. The Russian Mafia has its roots in Stalin's forced labor camps during the Soviet era, where political dissidents and criminals organized under leaders known as thieves-in-law.
Hundreds of FBI agents in New York are now devoted to fighting what one top official called an explosive growth in organized crime, fueled by the growing influence of Asian, Albanian, and Russian mobs.
By the 1980s, they had expanded into other countries, including the U.S. Also known as the Bratva, or Brotherhood, the organization took inspiration from the Italian Mafia, but had a looser hierarchical structure.
The Russian mob, based here in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, has grown into an intimidating force, a lucrative international enterprise stretching from Moscow to Israel to Thailand to the United States, blending old-fashioned brutality with high-tech skills.
It's composed of thousands of groups with an estimated 250,000 members, some with ties to Russia, others to countries that were part of the Soviet Union, such as Georgia. The high level of political corruption in Russia has allowed criminal groups to prosper. Their activities include human trafficking, racketeering, extortion, drug trafficking, and more.
The United States for them is not a major center of operations. For them, it's a good place to bank. It's a good place to keep money in case things get really bad. But their interest and their attention is still focused on the power politics of Russia.
Number 7, the Irish Mob. The Irish Mafia is one of the most infamous in the world. It got its start in the late 19th century with Irish-American street gangs who vied for control of New York with Italian and Jewish organizations.
For let it be known that the hand that tries to strike us from this land shall be swiftly cut down.
Then may the Christian Lord guide my hand against your Roman popery.
Prepare to receive the true Lord.
They have since become one of the most widespread criminal syndicates in the United States and Canada, with cities like Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, Cleveland, and Montreal linked to mob activity. Boston has hosted the Winter Hill Gang, an offshoot of the Irish Mob that was once run by the notorious Whitey Bulger.
Bulger eventually took over the Winter Hill Gang in Somerville from Howie Winter. And that's when Bulger and his cohort Stephen Flemmi moved their headquarters from Somerville to Lancaster Street in the North End.
This gang once had enormous influence within the FBI, as Bulger was in cahoots with the corrupt agent John Connolly. They're associated with a variety of crimes, such as assaults, murder, counterfeiting, drug trafficking, illegal gambling, and money laundering.
This is what it's like being a mobster. You fend for yourself and you're constantly starting over.
Number 6, the Jewish Mafia. Like the Irish Mob, the Jewish Mafia got its start on the streets of New York City in the late 19th century.
Jews gathered in what we call ethnic enclaves, where they would be attracted to places where they had relatives, where they had friends from the same area of the country they were from, and where there were jobs.
They eventually grew and flourished in the Prohibition era, as illegal bootlegging became increasingly lucrative. The Mafia saw its heyday from the 30s to the 60s, when the Jewish mob allied with the Italian-American Mafia to form the National Crime Syndicate.
So at that point, you can see that at every enterprise that he gets involved in, he's got to have an Italian partner.
Involved were some of the most notorious mobsters in American history, including Bugsy Siegel, Meyer Lansky, and Mickey Cohen.
He was always in some kind of trouble, but the law couldn't make anything stick. So the government went after his finances, just like they did with Cohen's idol, Al Capone.
I am willing to save my country the expense of a trial and plead guilty.
The Jewish Mafia has been closely linked with the Russian mob in recent years, and they have a heavy presence in the Brighton Beach area of Brooklyn. Number 5, the Albanian Mafia. Like the Russian Mafia, the Albanian Mafia isn't a cohesive organization, but a loose collection of Albanian criminal operations. Involved over a dozen mafia families who are allied with powerful syndicates, including the Sicilian Mafia and the Sinaloa cartel. Through their connections, the Albanian Mafia controls much of the European drug trade.
A British government report in 2020 found the cocaine market here is dominated by Albanian gangs.
In fact, the U.S. State Department considers Albania the mainstay of organized crime worldwide and the main points of drug trafficking, weapons, and immigrants and counterfeit goods.
Is this what you're seeing time and again increasingly now, like other forces, that the Albanian organised criminal gangs are moving into these areas?
No, they are. They certainly seem to be on the up. They seem the dominant ones at the moment.
Some have also linked the country's current Prime Minister, Edi Rama, to activities of the Albanian Mafia.
In Albania, unfortunately, it started with the local level, mayors of towns, of cities, connected straight to organized crime, elected because organized crime is backing them, and you have criminals themselves getting elected. It's why you see politicians, on the right of the spectrum, cooperating with the leftists without any problem, because in the end you don't have left and right. So politics is just a cover-up.
However, the FBI does not consider them as sophisticated as other organizations due to their clan-like structure. Number 4, the 5 families. The Bonanos, the Colombos, the Gambinos, the Genovese, the Lucchese's. Chances are that you've heard these names at some point, especially if you live in the general New York City area, or if you watch a lot of mob fiction.
The Gambino family was once among the most powerful criminal organizations in the U.S., but federal prosecutions in the 1980s and 90s sent its top leaders to prison, including John Gotti, often referred to as Dapper Don. Unlike the well-dressed Gotti, Cali kept a low profile. Now police are working to solve his high-profile murder.
They are collectively known as the Five Families, and they have an unbreakable hold on the New York City underworld. The Five Families were formed by Italian-American mobster Salvatore Maranzano in 1931 and are now controlled by the Commission, a governing mafia body consisting of the major bosses.
It was for money, it was for greed, it was for women, it was for fast cars, it was being part of a society, part of a brotherhood.
Many of them consider what they do almost military in nature. They consider themselves soldiers.
So they believe when your boss tells you have to kill somebody, they feel they're doing the right thing.
Each family is given a specific territory within New York, although their presence is also felt in states like Florida and Nevada. Number 3. The Sicilian Mafia. There is no mafia without the Sicilian Mafia. Also called Cosa Nostra, meaning our thing, the Sicilian Mafia originated the very idea and structure of the modern-day mob,
which began on the Italian island of Sicily in the 1800s. The main group, Cosa Nostra, which means our thing, slowly, bit by bit, infiltrating society.
Its roots lie in western Sicily in the late 1800s, but it gained widespread recognition when Sicilians emigrated to the U.S. in the early 20th century. Nowadays, the Sicilian Mafia specifically refers to the syndicate that is still operating in Sicily, composed of about 100 families.
The Mafia remains active, thousands of members still, but they are hated by many for their extortion of so-called peso, protection money from businesses, and the fight against them goes on.
They're particularly active in the city of Palermo. While they've lost ground in the drug trade of the 'Ndrangheta, they still run powerful protection rackets and have been linked to a number of powerful politicians in Italy.
The Mafia still has a strong presence in Sicily, even though their methods have evolved. A recent investigation resulted in the arrest of 31 people suspected of Mafia involvement in Palermo.
Number 2. Yakuza. Contrary to popular belief, Yakuza is not the criminal organization itself, but the title of its members.
The Yakuza has dominated Japan's criminal underworld for over a century through a quiet code of brutality, extortion rackets, and gambling dens. But in the last 10 years, highly restrictive anti-Yakuza legislation has made life as a member of the Yakuza dysfunctional with modern-day Japan. Some say these laws have changed the Yakuza and corrupted the code that held them together. Their numbers have plummeted, leaving thousands of former members in limbo, exiled from the underworld and outcast by society.
It's the equivalent to our use of gangster or mobster. In reality, the Yakuza belong to various Japanese crime syndicates or clans. Like many mafias on this list, these clans are not as powerful as they once were, and it's believed that the height of the Yakuza was in the 1960s.
I would say that there's a time that they were a necessary evil. The kind of crime that people hate, theft, robbery, street crimes, people breaking into your house, the Yakuza were good at suppressing that, and for many years. But you know, the number of police have increased. Japan has a very low crime rate. There is no need for the Yakuza anymore. They are an unnecessary evil.
But the crime syndicate continues to operate with over 12,000 alleged members and 3 principal clans. The largest, wealthiest, and most powerful is Yamaguchi-gumi, which consists of over 8,000 Yakuza and operates out of the city of Kobe.
I would describe the Mafia as a bit like cockroaches. They're very resistant. Today there are clans which are very good at computers, especially the young Yakuza. And right now, their priority is swindling COVID-related financial aid. It's a real scourge.
Number 1. 'Ndrangheta.
And then when we talk about the 'Ndrangheta, we are not talking about one unique strategy. We are talking about each clan that can do different things.
While pop culture has propped up the Sicilian Mafia, it's 'Ndrangheta that has the true stranglehold on illicit mob activity. Like the Cosa Nostra, 'Ndrangheta started in Italy, specifically in the region of Calabria, before emigration made their enterprise more powerful and widespread.
The 'Ndrangheta has become the wealthiest of the Italian mafias. It's considered the most far-reaching in terms of international links, and that together makes it more powerful.
While the organization partakes in all sorts of criminal activity, a large chunk of their revenue comes through drug trafficking, which they conduct with the help of powerful cartels. This enterprise has made Ndrangheta incredibly rich, and in 2010, it was estimated that their earnings accounted for 3% of Italy's entire GDP.
To imagine how big they are, take the annual revenue of Starbucks and McDonald's, put it together, more than $50 billion. That's what we're talking about. This is an organization that the anti-mafia prosecutor is trying to put many of these people behind bars, whom we profiled. Nicola Gratteri, who is really risking his life to do this, he says he believes it is the most powerful mafia in the world.
Okay, we're going to switch our focus now to the many biker gangs who continue to dominate the highways.
We are on just about every state in the nation now, and we're also in Mexico, Canada, Italy, Australia.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're looking at still active notorious motorcycle gangs. Disbanded or merged gangs will be put aside for now.
The Night Wolves have become a wildly popular cultural phenomenon in Russia. Putin noticed that, and now they're funded by his regime.
Warlocks Motorcycle Club. Formed in 1967, the Warlocks Motorcycle Club's numbers quickly grew thanks to returning Vietnam veterans. Its members run primarily in the Delaware Valley or Greater Philadelphia area. Many motorcycle clubs boast racially discriminatory rules, and the Warlocks are no exception. Male-only members get 3 mandatory tattoos: the idiom "born to lose," a Nazi symbol of hate, and an unclothed woman. They exclusively ride Harley-Davidson bikes. The Warlocks are one of 2 primary biker gangs in Pennsylvania, the other being the Pagans, and the 2 are not friendly with each other. The Warlocks have been associated with a number of homicides, home invasions, and forced capture of rival gang members, as well as the methamphetamine trade. Rock Machine. Rock Machine was formed by Salvatore and Giovanni Cazzetta in Montreal, Quebec in 1986, and has since grown to multiple chapters across Canada, the US, Australia, and a handful of other countries.
The Rock Machine was a drug-dealing powerhouse, not willing to bow to the Angels.
The Machine once rivaled Hell's Angels for control of the local narcotics trade, resulting in the 1994 to 2002 Quebec Biker War, which eventually caused hundreds of deaths, injuries, and arrests.
When the Hells Angels went to war with the Rock Machine, it was almost like free fire. It was a real battleground.
In 2000, Rock Machine was accepted as a probation club for the Bandidos MC, something a little different. The club accepts males only, not unusual, but there is no racial discrimination. All ethnicities are welcome. Though the club has been found guilty of the usual list of crimes, they claim to reject criminals from their current membership. Some are skeptical of these claims. Rebels Motorcycle Club. Though it sometimes seems biker gangs are native to North America, they do exist elsewhere. Rebels Motorcycle Club was formed in Australia in 1969 under the original moniker of Confederates.
The biggest group in Australia by far is the Rebels. It's 3 times larger than any other group in Australia.
Though the Australian authorities classify the club as a criminal organization, they themselves claim to be a non-profit gathering of motorcycle enthusiasts. Their rap sheet speaks differently. The Rebels are accused of homicide, drug trafficking, extortion, and a long list of other crimes.
We ride around on like wild motorbikes. We dress differently. We're covered in tattoos. Yeah. We got crazy haircuts, whatever. Yeah, we're different to the average Aussie, but we're a soft target.
As with many motorcycle clubs, the Rebels have had some turf war issues, namely with the aforementioned Rock Machine, which established a chapter in Perth in 2009. With a number of Rebels members switching their patches over to Rock Machine, tensions ensued that have thus far featured firebombs and assassination attempts.
We've done a number of searches on their clubhouses.
Black Pistons Motorcycle Club. As much as biker gangs have rivals, they also have allies. Formed in Germany in 2002, the Black Pistons Motorcycle Club supports and provides new recruits for the Outlaws MC, who are featured later on this list. The Black Pistons became an international club in a very short time, with chapters emerging in the US, Canada, Asia, and other European countries. Membership is around the 200-plus mark. They're essentially the headhunters for the Outlaws, hopefully not literally, as well as a proxy for the latter's various reported criminal activities such as fraud, intimidation, assault, and participating in drug trafficking activities. Night Wolves. The Night Wolves Motorcycle Club was formed in Russia in 1989 and has since grown to include at least 45 international chapters and around 7,000 members.
The Night Wolves are loyal to the Kremlin, ultra-Orthodox and convinced patriots.
The Night Wolves initially came together a little differently from the others on this list. They were a group of rock music enthusiasts and motorcycle riders with a penchant for putting on illegal concerts. The group boasts close ties to the Russian Kremlin, from which they get funding, as well as Vladimir Putin himself.
The Night Wolves definitely enjoy political influence in Russia. The bikers make their presence felt in the Crimea and on the Black Sea coast, together with Vladimir Putin.
They're also affiliated with the Russian Orthodox Church, aiding in religious pilgrimages, among other things, and have been known to aid in the current Russian conflict with Ukraine. As a result of this, rival gangs have criticized the group's ironic politicizing of motorcycle clubs.
You can't compare us with a motorcycle club in the West. They're all lawless. But we're not.
The Mongols. The Mongols were formed in 1969 primarily from a group of Vietnam veterans, which seemed to be a popular practice in the late 60s.
They have a code of conduct, an expectation of each other that they will suffer no slight.
The founders were Latino, forming their own group as a result of the racially limited membership requirements for the Hells Angels at the time. The club accepts more than just Caucasians, including Hispanic, Middle Eastern, Kurdish, and Arab members in their worldwide chapters, though of course no girls allowed. They currently boast a collective 1,000 to 2,000 members internationally.
The Mongols are a relatively small organization. What they lack in numbers, they make up for in bravado.
Members pay fees and follow a 70-page book of club rules, such as no drug use or criminal arrests. These rules are perhaps a little loose, however, as the Mongols have been said to engage in some less than reputable activities.
Are there members that do things that maybe, I don't approve of? Yeah, okay, there is. But is it part of a club function? No. Do we try and discourage it? Yes, we try and discourage it.
Devil's Disciples. No, that isn't a typo. The Devil's Disciples formed in 1967. Its original members got their patches made cheaply, resulting in the spelling error.
DICIPLES. That's disciples. If you get asked too many times, you punch them in the head.
Why get new ones? They were founded in California but grew to have chapters in at least 11 states. Membership numbers aren't clear.
They keep their overall club numbers to a minimum, which in the long run makes it easier to control politically.
The Disciples are allegedly involved in a number of crimes, including methamphetamine trafficking, which seems popular among biker gangs, and possession of an alarming number of firearms on more than one occasion.
The Disciples play by only one set of rules: their own.
Famous mullet wielder Dog the Bounty Hunter was once affiliated with the Disciples in the late 1960s, early 70s. Banditos Motorcycle Club. Founded in 1966 Texas by Vietnam vet Donald Eugene Chambers, the Banditos today boast a presence in over 300 chapters located in at least 20 countries. Male-only membership is currently estimated to be in between 2,000 and 2,500.
2,500 strong, the Banditos rule the roads in the U.S. and stretch across the globe from Europe to Asia and Australia.
No girls allowed. We're beginning to notice a trend here. Male Vietnam vets and motorcycle clubs seem to go hand in hand. Like most, if not all others on this list, the Banditos are considered to be a criminal enterprise by multiple legal institutions.
When you're dealing with them, be aware of what they do, that they carry weapons, that they sell drugs, that they steal motorcycles, that they assault and even kill people.
They are considered to be one of the big four criminal biker gangs in the U.S., along with Hells Angels, Outlaws, and Pagans.
A common component is that most of these guys have had a missing piece of their childhood. So, in a sense, they are looking for a family.
Outlaws Motorcycle Club. The oldest motorcycle club in the world. The Outlaws came together in 1935. Yes, kids, they had motorcycles back then. Membership is Caucasian-only men who conform to the biker gang's rules and lifestyle.
What began as little more than alcohol-soaked debauchery soon took a sinister turn.
They started buying these motorcycles and forming little gangs, and then they could terrorize the countryside.
Motorcycle gangs fought to control territory, and the Chicago Outlaws led the charge.
It bears mentioning that in all these clubs, membership is earned and not freely given. Once you're granted membership, there are meetings, mandatory dress code, and strict adherence to club rules.
The outlaw motto is God forgives, outlaws don't. And I think for the most part, that's self-explanatory.
The Outlaws have at least 275 chapters in 23 countries and are supported by a number of other groups, such as, oddly enough, Outcast MC, an African-American MC club. They have been reported as participating in most of the other crimes mentioned in this list.
For the Outlaws, hatred toward the Angels is embedded deep in their culture.
Hells Angels. The Hells Angels were initially formed, as one story goes, in 1948, when World War II veteran Otto Friedli broke off from his former club, the Pissed Off Bastards, to form his own gang.
Since 1948, they've been fixtures on the American scene.
leather-jacketed so-called angels who cultivate and relish their image as mythic outlaws who are also pop heroes.
The Hells Angels now have 467 chapters in 59 countries. Their 6,000 plus members makes them the biggest outlaw MC in the world. Members are male only, but women can join their significant others as old ladies or their property. Charming.
The angels don't claim that they are saints.
You know, people come around us and they start interacting with us, and then, you know, they have a few drinks, and the next thing they're starting to think, well, gee, these guys don't look so tough, and, you know, maybe I'll take one of these guys on, and then one thing leads to another, and, you know, we have to educate them.
Though they claim to be racially inclusive, many members have opposing views, resulting in few to no non-Caucasian members. The Hells Angels have been connected to a number of criminal activities, though they claim to be just a group of bike enthusiasts.
I think law enforcement, through the media, feeds what they want to feed to the public.
What would you name your motorcycle club?
We're the Hells Satans out of Bakersfield.
You're the Hells Satans? What a fun coincidence! My gang's name is also the...
Shut up! You stole our club name.
According to our bylaws, we gotta stump you.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, our next video may shock you. That's because we're gonna be looking at serial killers who, as of the original video's posting, continue to evade justice.
All 8 of the women were from the south side of the tracks. There's that cliche, you're from the other side of the tracks. This is literally the cliche come to life.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're examining 10 American serial killers that are still active.
And that man you see there in the black, police believe might be our serial killer.
For this list, we're looking at the most frightening suspected serial killers based in the USA that haven't been caught or convicted yet. Who's the scariest on our list? The Frankfurt Slasher.
From 1985 through 1990, night brought terror to the streets of Frankfurt.
For 5 years, women in the neighborhood of Frankfurt and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania were in a state of terror. On the loose was a mysterious killer who brutally attacked and claimed the lives of at least 8 women. In 1990, a victim was discovered behind a fish market, leading to the arrest of Leonard Christopher, who worked there. Despite the suspect being described as a middle-aged white man, Christopher, who was black, was charged with her murder. While he was locked up, the body of a 9th victim was found, but that didn't stop Christopher from being convicted and sentenced to life. With the other 8 murders left unsolved, the Frankfurt Slasher may very well still be out there.
Not only was Ms. Dowd never given justice because her murder was never found and caught, the other 8 women, those murders are still unsolved.
The Colonial Parkway Killer. While the Colonial Parkway is often seen as a scenic roadway in Virginia, it was also the hunting ground for a prolific slayer. From 1986 to 1989, 4 couples either vanished from the parkway or were discovered dead in the area.
It's also my opinion that there had to be 2 killers because these vigorous young women fought back.
Thomas had hair between her fingers, fighting back.
Judging from the nature of the crime scenes, authorities suspected that the assailant was a law enforcement officer. In 2010, Fred Atwell, a former sheriff's deputy, was announced as a suspect in the Colonial Parkway slayings. However, Atwell believed he was being targeted by the FBI, as he had revealed that someone leaked photos of the crime scenes from their office. Even some of the victims' families defended him. Regardless, Atwell wasn't charged for the murders, and to date, no one else has been either.
You know, you try to put it out of your head so you can function on a day-to-day basis. And for me, it's mostly been about anger that there's somebody out there that committed this crime who's continued to enjoy their life and liberty.
The Texas Killing Fields. Deep in the heart of League City, Texas, sits a 25-acre plot of land known as the Texas Killing Fields. Between 1971 and 2006, the remains of over 30 people, mostly young women, were discovered there. One popular theory is that several serial killers frequented the fields to commit their despicable crimes. In some of the cases, police investigation led to certain individuals being charged and convicted. Notable among these was William Lewis Reese, who, after being convicted of a murder in Oklahoma, confessed to 3 of the Texas Killing Fields deaths. Although he was sentenced to life for those crimes, that still leaves a large number of victims whose killers are yet to be caught. The Jeff Davis 8 killer or killers.
These women's faces are on billboards, along with billboards for casinos and hunting shops and gas stations.
In the mid to late 2000s, Jefferson Davis Parish in Louisiana had to grapple with the deaths of 8 women that have remained unsolved for years. The bodies of these women were so badly decomposed that it was virtually impossible to know exactly how they died. What made these cases peculiar was that most of the victims shared many things in common.
It was in the drug world, bad. We tried helping her, we tried getting her help.
Not only had they all worked as police informants in the past, some of them were even related and had lived together.
The last victim, victim number 8, occurs within 6 months or so of the task force's inception.
The investigation was plagued by police misconduct and an apparent disregard for the evidence. This has led to several people being arrested for the crimes, only to be released soon after due to problems with the evidence. The Chicago Strangler. Prowling the streets of Chicago, Illinois is a person believed to be responsible for strangling at least 51 women. Between 2001 and 2018, this individual targeted mainly black women who offered adult services. For years, the families of the victims tried to get the police to find the culprit, all to no avail.
As a longtime resident, I am not seeing a lot of effort on actual crime solving.
In 2019, the Chicago PD finally gave in and began looking closely at the case. However, they revealed that they couldn't find enough evidence to attribute the crimes to one serial killer. Instead, they began investigating them as isolated murders, which led to the 2020 arrest of a man named Arthur Hilliard for the death of one of the victims. The other cases remain unsolved. The Little Rock serial stabber. Starting in 2020, a mysterious assailant dubbed the Little Rock serial stabber attacked 4 people in Little Rock, Arkansas, with 3 of them being fatal. At first, the crimes were thought to be random, but as they persisted, it became clearer that they were most likely carried out by the same person. The incidents occurred in the early hours of the morning, with grainy surveillance footage from one of the attacks showing a hooded figure with a tall, slender build.
They say the man in this video is who they are looking for. Someone who survived one of the attacks says he was an adult black male over 6 feet tall.
The culprit was described by the only surviving victim as a black male standing at over 6 feet tall. A $20,000 reward was issued for information leading to the arrest. However, since 2021, the slasher seems to have gone underground. The I-70 killer. In the spring of 1992, there was a wave of killings in Midwestern stores along the Interstate 70 highway. Through the states of Indiana, Kansas, and Missouri, an unidentified man claimed the lives of 6 store clerks, earning the nickname the I-70 Killer.
A shoe store in Indianapolis, a ceramic shop in Terre Haute, a bridal shop in Wichita, an herbal medicine store outside Kansas City.
In one of the incidents, the killer was seen by a customer who walked in after he had committed the crime and was able to escape unhurt. This customer later gave the police a composite sketch of the criminal, but somehow he has still eluded arrest. Some believe the slayer is also responsible for 3 fatal incidents in Texas and Kansas.
Harry Edward Greenwell was accused of killing 3 women along the I-65 corridor in the 1980s, years before the I-70 killer's first murder.
There is currently a $25,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest of the I-70 killer.
And that man you see there in the black, police believe might be our serial killer.
The Eastbound Strangler. In November 2006, 2 people who had gone out for a walk in Atlantic City, New Jersey, accidentally stumbled upon a crime scene. Buried in a ditch behind a motel were the bodies of 4 women who made a living as sex workers in the area. The bodies were placed far from each other and positioned to face east. Hence, the suspect was dubbed the Eastbound Strangler.
He takes his victims' shoes and poses their bodies in a line facing east.
Over the years, there have been several potential suspects behind the brutal crimes, including a handyman who lived in the motel and even the Long Island serial killer. A reward of $25,000 has since been issued for information leading to an arrest, but no charges have been filed so far. The West Mesa Bone Collector. In 2009, a woman was walking her dog through the desert in West Mesa of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Due to recent construction work affecting the ground, the 2 discovered a human bone poking out. The authorities arrived and soon found the remains of several people, most of which were female and all of whom had vanished between 2001 and 2005.
Their bodies were in shallow graves, scattered across a 100-acre plot of land being prepared for development. Almost all of the women were Hispanic.
Most of them were involved in the use of illegal substances and offered adult services to earn a living. As such, there's some speculation that a trafficking ring could have been involved.
We have eliminated many suspects.
At this time, there are a number of people who are being investigated as persons of interest.
Regardless, the police have yet to identify the person or persons behind the gruesome crimes, even after offering a $100,000 reward. The Long Island serial killer.
Can you shut the door? No, time to go. Please, something's gonna happen to me.
After Shannon Gilbert made a terrifying 911 call and vanished in 2010, investigators searched the beach areas around Long Island, New York for any sign of her. Instead, they unearthed the bodies of 4 other women. A year later, after discovering several other victims, Gilbert's remains were found nearby. Altogether, the remains of at least 10 people have been found in the area, dating back to 1996. Most of the victims were sex workers who advertised their services on Craigslist. Over the years, there have been several suspects, some with criminal history, but they've all been dismissed. In 2011, authorities issued a $25,000 reward for information on the person or persons responsible for the horrific crimes.
Cults are formed by ensnaring the vulnerable, and you may just be surprised about how many cults are still active today. I know I was.
이상 가정을 이룰 것을 약속하느냐?
네!
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for 20 of the most disturbing cults that are still active.
Clearly remember different times growing up when people would literally be chased through the woods and tackled.
For this list, we're looking at belief groups with shady practices or pasts that still allegedly boast membership to the present day. We won't be including officially recognized religions such as Scientology, though some might consider their behaviors to be cult-like. Which of these do you find the most disturbing? The Brethren.
My daughter Brittany, or how do you say it? Shlomi, is in the group for 7 years now.
The Brethren, also known by names like Brothers and Sisters and the Road Ministry, was founded around 1971 by Jimmy T. Roberts. Roberts considered modern churches to have become more materialistic than spiritual. His goal was to form a group of traveling disciples that would mirror the people who followed Jesus in the New Testament. Members were instructed to leave their possessions and families behind.
Though I don't intend on telling you where I am geographically, I can tell you where I am spiritually. I'm in the company of the most God-fearing people I have ever known.
At times, the nomadic group was seen relying on dumpsters for meals. The Brethren also draw criticism for making it difficult for those outside of the group to get in contact with their loved ones. Documentaries like God Willing have made it clear how unsettling it can be when people disappear into the Road Ministry's standards of living.
Now, when you say you have a burden, what does that mean?
I feel like a lot of left for her.
Oh, okay.
If you could tell her, I don't know if I could tell her how much I love her.
Congregation for the Light. Referred to in headlines as Manhattan's secret cult, the Congregation for the Light was formed in the 1960s. Once inside the secretive group, members are encouraged to keep their practices and teachings they learn away from anyone outside. First-hand accounts say that everyone in the congregation must prioritize weekly meetings above any other obligation. Additionally, they believe that past karma directly affects if people get sick or suffer other bad consequences. Members have reacted negatively to LGBTQ+ initiates, discourage women from attending college outside of New York, and believe in enforcing physical punishment to young members. Since congregation leaders don't write much down, many of their specific tenets remain shrouded in mystery. Apostles of Infinite Love. After a man named Michael Collin reportedly had a vision of God, he formed a Catholic group that merged with a reclusive religious group in Saint-Jovite, Quebec. They all became known as the Apostles of Infinite Love. The group came under scrutiny soon after their organization was founded. When police tried to investigate reports that young people were being mistreated in the 60s, the authorities found it hard to locate the vulnerable victims. A former member named Germain Courrier later claimed that adults in the group actively kept him from being discovered. Despite the complaints about what younger people endured, the Apostles of Infinite Love, now known as the Order of the Magnificat of the Mother of God, are still around. Love has won.
Carlson has led a group that today calls itself Love Has Won.
The dozen or so core members live shacked up together in an incredibly stressful house in Colorado.
Through a combination of personal conversations and online videos, Amy Carlson recruited followers to her movement. Love Has Won members believed that she was nearly 20 billion years old because she had been reincarnated countless times over the years. This ideology also got her followers into trouble.
14,000 years you've been on this earth before Christ.
That's correct.
It's no wonder you're tired.
At times, members were made to feel guilty for transgressions they committed in past lives. Followers also spent multiple hours being criticized by the other members of their group. Their food and sleep schedules were also reportedly controlled by their leader. When Carlson fell ill, they allegedly didn't take her to a hospital due to some of her own teachings. Following her death, the group splintered into the Joy Reigns and 5D Full Disclosure groups.
How did she die? Kenneth, I actually do not have an answer to that. Sincerely, I don't know.
Kashi Ashram.
I have been given a very special gift. And that gift is the ability to take pain.
Kashi Ashram was founded in 1976 when Ma Jaya Sati Bhagavati, born Joyce Green, established a commune in Florida. Years later, the founder was found at the center of serious accusations surrounding marriage and its youngest members. Members were allegedly encouraged to have children so Ma Jaya could take care of more young people. There were cases where the founder's name was placed on birth certificates of infants outside of her family. The religious leader also reportedly made one of her daughters marry a man against their will. There were also numerous accounts of people of all ages being physically assaulted for not doing what Ma Jaya commanded. Her organization still continued to move forward after the leader's death in 2012.
So you take from it what you want to. Symbolic, perhaps. Truth, perhaps.
Word of Faith Fellowship. There are conflicting reports as to whether people in this organization follow a list of rules that range from asking permission to buy cars to having to ask what their college major will be. But the Word of Faith Fellowship has definitely stirred up a lot of controversy. According to former members, congregants who didn't follow rules were subject to physical or mental torment.
Clearly remember different times growing up when people would literally be chased through the woods and tackled and manhandled and brought back to the church.
Known as blasting within the organization, members were allegedly punished for their sexual orientation, impure thoughts, acting out in school, and more. Over 40 members once came forward to the Associated Press to detail horror stories about what happened to them. To this day, founders Jane and Sam Whaley continue to insist that the fellowship is free of wrongdoing.
And they're going to say he had to do this because Jesus told him.
Correct, yeah.
The Nuwaubian Nation.
Jerry, our tour guide, says he came here from Alabama. The sheriff says most of the other residents come from the Northeast, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore.
When Dwight York, aka Malachi Z. York, started what would become the Nuwaubian Nation in New York, his followers were instructed to give up material possessions. They were also expected to raise a certain amount of money or face physical punishment. After attracting more followers, York moved his organization to Georgia and built an Egyptian-themed headquarters. After claiming he lived in a sovereign state, local officials arrested him for the reports of what happened there. York was charged with over 100 counts of mistreating young people that were a part of the Nuwaubian Nation.
We built it. It's so beautiful out there. It's a beautiful, peaceful environment where we invite any nationality, any race to come out and visit.
He was sentenced to 135 years in prison for his various crimes. However, York's followers still kept the belief system alive.
So this is the Compound nightclub?
No, it's not a compound.
Oh, it's not a compound? I'm sorry.
Unification Church.
What is the mission of the Unification Church?
神様を中心にちょっと言いにくいか中心として理想的な家庭を築く。
This Christian organization was started by Sun Myung Moon, a man who would eventually declare himself as a new Messiah. Throughout the 20th century, the Unification Church's push for members to make expensive donations that were coined as spiritual sales was criticized. This religious movement also drew ire because of its anti-LGBTQ+ stance and ties to several political causes. The latter criticism came to the forefront in the wake of a major 2022 incident. After a man named Tetsuya Yamagami saw his mother go bankrupt to support the group,
I didn't expect anything like this would happen in Japan.
He targeted high-ranking members. He assassinated former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe because the politician had associations with the Unification Church. The crime drew more attention to the already controversial organization.
確かにその容疑者の供述した内容だけを見ると、やっぱり注目を浴びざるを得ないなとは率直に思ったんですけど。
The Nation of Yahweh. A religious movement begun by Yahweh Ben Yahweh became the source of serious acts of violence. After the group was criticized for promoting violent black supremacist ideals, multiple incidents suggested that members were taking lives. Additionally, multiple people who tried to leave the group were either threatened with violence, brutally assaulted, or even killed. Those who stayed within the group were not safe from punishment. Members who failed to meet quotas to collect money were subjected to physical torment.
They've been investigating for several years, and that's all they can find. So they're on a fishing expedition.
In 1991, Yahweh Ben Yahweh faced jail time for his involvement in 14 murders. His incarceration eventually caused the group to retreat for 2 years before it returned and continued. While current leaders have moved away from the violent teachings, the movement's dark history still remains.
He found a successful philosophy that people would flock to and actually start joining.
The Church of Bible Understanding.
Trimble believes Church of Bible Understanding is a cult started by Stuart Trail, taking people's money with false pretenses for members and society.
American members who left this group reported that their time with this church was exceedingly difficult. Founder Stuart Trail pushed for followers to completely disconnect from their old lives. Once inside, members were expected to give the majority of their earnings to the church. While Trail and the organization profited, they lived in overcrowded and sometimes pest-filled places. Members of the Church of Bible Understanding were also discouraged from getting information from the outside world or marrying at all. Outside of America, the organization was criticized for running orphanages in Haiti that subjected young children to horrible conditions. After Trail died in 2018, organization members continued to practice their faith and kept running homes for orphaned people.
We're just trying to get their side of the story because apparently the church has come under fire for conditions at that orphanage. Can you connect us with them, you think?
No, I don't think I should do that.
The Rajneesh Movement. Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, a controversial philosophy scholar and professor, founded his movement in the late 1960s, early 70s. He dismissed established religions and instead focused on free thought, meditation, and sexual freedom.
Now there are two ways. Either repress sex as it has been done by all the so-called religious traditions of the world, or transform it. I am for transformation.
He also had a marked interest in communist literature, which influenced his teachings. He moved his facility to Oregon in the early 1980s after attracting too much controversy in India, yet found the same hostilities in the States. In order to gain political influence, the movement committed crimes such as mass local salmonella poisoning and an attempted assassination of a U.S. attorney. He was then deported, and the movement's commune was re-established in India in 1985. Rajneesh died in 1990, but the movement, now called Osho, is still very much active.
What's going to happen to your holy man?
Bhagwan had always told me that when things get too difficult for him, he will sit in his chair, take an injection, and disappear.
The Order of the Solar Temple.
The order attracted many successful upper-middle-class people. Disillusioned with conventional churches,
yet hungry for spiritual experiences.
The Order of the Solar Temple, or International Order of Chivalry Solar Tradition, was founded in Geneva in 1984. The order took its influence from the Knights Templar, which had been reformed into several factions in 1805. In its heyday, the order had a presiding council, as well as multiple lodges around the world, in which they would perform initiation rites and ceremonies.
Only the elite, who had passed all the initiations from novice to knight, were treated to the secrets of the inner sanctum. Here, they were privy to startling revelations.
The order believed that an apocalyptic event would occur sometime in the mid-90s, and that in order to survive, they had to achieve a higher plane of existence. In the mid-90s, over 70 of its members were murdered or took their own lives.
Investigators say the cult was obsessed with death and considered it an illusion. Experts say cult leaders told their followers that fire would lead them to a new world on another planet.
With more to follow. Despite this, the group is still thought to have between 140 and 500 active members. Raelism.
The Raelians, now 30,000 strong worldwide, believe that space beings created humans through genetic experimentation.
Though its classification as a cult is sometimes debated, Raelism was, or is still, at some point in the cult category. It's essentially what's called a UFO religion, and was founded in France by Claude Vorilhon in 1974.
It's not only the scientific aspect of creating life, but also the political, religious belief, sociology, everything is. We are entering a new world which is completely different. But there is no reason
a better world?
A much better world.
They believed that an alien race known as Elohim created humans. The Elohim have been mistaken for gods historically, and any prophetic figure such as Jesus or Muhammad was created by them. Vorilhon, known as Rael, is the 40th and final prophet. Followers believe that the world is in an age of apocalypse, and that new technologies must be developed, after which time the Elohim will return to Earth and share their extraterrestrial knowledge with us. Current Raelian members were counted at around 18,000 in 2017.
The Rael movement has two goals. One is to spread the message, and two, to build the embassy.
Aleph.
Inside, sect members were undergoing survival training. Chemicals and drugs were used to raise, then remove states of anxiety.
Aum Shinrikyo, or more recently Aleph, was founded in Japan in 1987 by Chizuo Matsumoto, later known as Shoko Asahara. It's a doomsday cult, and its beliefs combine aspects of Indian and Tibetan Buddhism, Hinduism, Christian millenarianism, yogic practices, and the prophecies of Nostradamus.
The religion is a blend of yoga and mysticism, with bits of Buddhist, Hindu, and Christian teachings thrown in. His catchiest sales point, though, was a claim to levitation.
It started off fairly tame, but eventually the cult became criminal, with accusations of extortion, murder, and forced membership, among other things. They performed a number of attacks. At some point, the group began to manufacture sarin gas and were responsible for the attack on the Tokyo subway in 1995, which left upwards of 1,000 injured. A number of the more prominent members were executed in 2018, but there were still indications of active membership as of 2019.
About 20 members live here, an austere lifestyle driven by the desire to spread the master's teachings.
Hello, everyone. This is Shoko Asahara.
12 tribes.
If you're not in, you're out. If you're not with me, you're against me. If you want to have a strong identity, create a strong enemy, and then you really know who you are.
Founded in Tennessee during the evangelical Jesus movement of the 1970s, the 12 tribes might seem like a simple, wholesome community on the surface. It aspires to recreate the original Christian church, as depicted in the Book of Acts. However, it allegedly exerts authoritarian control over its followers' lives and promotes strict corporal punishment, reportedly by parents and non-parents alike, which has led to accusations of child abuse.
Tessa remembers being sent out to work on her own when she was just 5 years old.
Sometimes working in kitchens, like preparing food for the whole rest of the community, or in like candle factories. So I remember being like 4 or 5 years old working with this boiling wax.
Once followers reach a certain level, they're allegedly instructed that Jews are cursed for murdering Jesus, that gay people should be put to death, and that black people are naturally servants to whites. The group has often flown under the radar, but there's a lot more going on beneath the smiling and folk dancing.
They control your logic and your thinking, and they control your money.
Happy Science.
So Happy Science have so many teachings that you can learn about them. So that is a lot of wisdom you got learn.
Founded in 1986 by former businessman Ryuho Okawa, Happy Science focuses on a fourfold path to happiness. Members of the group attend seminars and training in order to climb the group ladder. They worship El Cantare, a being that is said to have been born over 300 million years ago on Earth and reincarnated through time until its current incarnation, which is, of course, Okawa himself.
Ryuho Okawa. This guy's the supreme god of Earth, more powerful than Jesus, Allah, and Moses combined.
さらに私は、ブッダも魂の兄弟の一人で、ブッダも地上に送り込んだ。2500年前に送った。
The problem with this one comes in the form of major uncredited claims. For example, that the organization can cure the pandemic with, quote, spiritual vaccines. Okawa's own son has left the group and subsequently denounced his father's actions. Happy Science claims to have 11 million followers. However, a former member has said it's more like 30,000.
There are membership fees, there are donations for prayers, for blessings. Members may kind of rise in status based on donation to Okawa and his larger project.
The Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Every aspect of this family's life, who they marry, what they wear, even what they eat, is controlled by the man they call their prophet, Warren Jeffs.
The LDS Church spawned some fundamentalist sects when the core religion opted to renounce the practice of polygamy. Those who wished to continue the practice branched off, remaining Mormon but on their own terms. Polygamy remains illegal, however, and in 1953, an entire FLDS community was arrested in Short Creek, Arizona, modern-day Colorado City, and most had their children taken away from them.
We were taught from birth that in order to get what they called the highest degree of the celestial kingdom, you had to have at least 3 wives while you lived on earth. And if you did not, you could not reach that highest degree.
A compound in Texas was raided in 2008 after Child Protective Services was made aware of allegations of abuse. Over 400 children were taken from the compound and placed in CPS custody.
We felt like the children out there on the property were in danger, and that's when it became a very large operation.
Leader of FLDS, Warren Jeffs, remains in his position, despite being in prison for life after acts against minors. The sect currently has between 6,000 and 10,000 followers. Superior Universal Alignment, the second UFO cult on this list. Superior Universal Alignment, or Lineamiento Universal Superior, was founded by Valentina Giandraghi in 1981. She claimed to have received messages from extraterrestrials warning her of destruction. If, however, she shared their warnings with others, she and her followers would be saved. Similar to the Raelians, Sua believes that Jesus was actually an extraterrestrial messenger. They also believe that males born after 1981 are evil, and that their lives should end as payment to the superior beings. Between 1981 and 1993, 19 Brazilian boys disappeared, were mutilated, and left to die in the woods. The guilty cult members were sentenced, but Giandraghi was acquitted. The cult is still active and has been running a website since 2009. The Family International.
Berg preached to the hippie generation about Jesus and recruited them to join him in his all-consuming drive to save souls.
The Children of God, more recently the Family International, was founded in 1968 by David Berg and was immediately subject to controversy as it used sex to lure potential members, which was Berg's own invention, which he called flirty fishing. They established colonies worldwide, as many as 130 in 70 countries. The Family International draw their beliefs from the Bible, yet with a heavy emphasis on loving Jesus, which is done through sexual interaction. Over time, there have been a large number of child mistreatment allegations raised against them.
Reportedly, keeping children is a cult policy.
While longing for her 4 lost children, Vivian lived here in this small apartment in Sioux Falls, disoriented, unable to hold a job, and subsisting on welfare.
Celebrities such as River and Joaquin Phoenix, as well as Rose McGowan, were partially raised in this group before finding their way out. TFI is still active, albeit as an online community, boasting 1,450 members.
We were trafficked. We were moved constantly. We were never taught anybody's names. So it's very difficult to learn your abusers' names. And
You think that was by design?
Oh, absolutely.
NXIVM.
To understand NXIVM, NXIVM is the umbrella company.
Founded in 1998 by Keith Raniere and Nancy Salzman, NXIVM started out as a self-help group which offered classes called Executive Success Programs. In 2017, former members urged authorities to investigate, initially for a subgroup within NXIVM called The Vow. It was a group of women branded with Raniere's initials and on a rotation to have relations with the founder and recruit members.
You think the person who's being branded should be completely nude and sort of held to the table like a, sort of almost like a sacrifice? I don't know if that's a feeling of submission.
In a sort of exceedingly complex relationship scheme. On top of this, in 2018, charges were brought against Raniere and 5 female members for a number of crimes, including extortion, sex trafficking, and the list goes on. Raniere got 120 years in prison. As of 2020, a number of groups branched from NXIVM are said to be active and recruiting.
We didn't even know that we were being experimented on. We thought we were just kind of learning and growing, but really they were observing and watching how we responded to the lack of sleep, how we responded to lack of food, how all of these things affected our psyche, and we were very weak. We were weak mentally and we were weak physically.
Okay, from cults to cartels we go, as these upcoming illegal groups continue to fuel a global economy of crime.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 cartels that are still active.
There was only one explanation for the flamboyance and the jet.
For this list, we'll be looking at the most prolific and powerful drug cartels that are still in operation. Have you heard about any of these organizations? Number 10, Oficina de Envigado. In the 1990s, Oficina operated as the enforcement wing of Pablo Escobar's infamous Medellin cartel in Colombia. It was later associated with the paramilitary group, the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia. After Escobar's death and the collapse of the Medellin cartel, Oficina evolved into a drug trafficking organization in its own right. However, a slew of high-profile arrests saw it weakened and broken up into a coalition of smaller organizations. Nowadays, it mostly provides services to other drug traffickers, operating as a sort of mafia federation. Number 9, Jalisco New Generation Cartel. A relatively new cartel, the Jalisco New Generation was founded in 2009, but has become notorious for its use of extreme violence. Named after the Mexican state of Jalisco, the semi-militarized group is the country's most dangerous organization. It partakes in trafficking narcotics and stealing crude oil.
It's clearly an elite group, with military training at its origin.
The group is heavily armed, and even once shot down a military helicopter with an RPG. It's currently led by the most wanted man in Mexico, Nemesio Azaguera Cervantes, whose bounty has been set to $10 million by the U.S. authorities.
By flooding the U.S. with drugs, agents say he makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year and is responsible for a third of the drugs flooding streets in the U.S.
Number 8, Comando Vermelho. Portuguese for Red Command, Comando Vermelho is a Brazilian cartel involved in various forms of trafficking, including drugs and arms, but they also commit more personal crimes, including robberies, loan sharking, and kidnapping. Those who have seen the film City of God may be familiar with Comando Vermelho as it showcases the gang's origins. The group is primarily active in the city of Rio de Janeiro, but its reach extends to nearby countries like Bolivia, Peru, and Colombia. Comando Vermelho has fought fiercely with authorities, and in 2010 famously went to battle with the Brazilian army. In 2016, members shot down a police helicopter, killing all 4 officers on board. Number 7, Cartel of the Suns. Cartels often grow powerful thanks to influence with politicians and the military. And that's how Venezuela's Cartel of the Suns was born. The organization began in the mid-1990s when corrupt members of the Venezuelan military turned a blind eye to drugs coming in from Colombia. This soon evolved into active participation. In fact, the name Cartel of the Suns references the sun-like emblems worn by Venezuelan military generals. It's believed that the cartel flourished under the corrupt rule of Hugo Chavez, and it's alleged that President Nicolas Maduro is also involved. Another man implicated in its operation is Diosdado Cabello, the captain of the Venezuelan Armed Forces. Number 6. Primeiro Comando de Capital. According to the Brazilian government, Primeiro Comando de Capital is the biggest and most active criminal organization in the country. Part cartel, part mafia, PCC participates in nearly every aspect of organized crime, including drug trafficking, protection rackets, and robberies. In April of 2017, Primeiro Comando de Capital executed the largest robbery in Paraguayan history, stealing $8 million and killing one police officer.
Armed with military-grade weapons, dozens of robbers fired at the facility. Rocket launchers and explosives were used to blow open the vault.
It operates primarily in the state of Sao Paulo and has close alliance with Ndrangheta, one of the most violent and powerful mafias in the world. PCC's leader, a man known as Marcola, is currently serving 234 years in prison and is controlling the cartel from inside its walls. Number 5. The Tijuana Cartel. There was once a time when the Tijuana Cartel was the most dangerous group in Mexico. It came to prominence following the arrest of Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, who ran the Guadalajara cartel throughout the 70s and 80s.
Félix Gallardo is a very high-functioning psychopath.
His story was famously captured in the Netflix drama Narcos Mexico.
La familia nos decían. Pues sí, éramos poquitos, ¿verdad? Pero ahora con este trato que hice con el gobierno, yo no creo que haya un traficante más poderoso en México.
Upon his imprisonment, Gallardo's cartel split up, and his nephews, the Felix brothers, started the Tijuana cartel. The cartel has dwindled in power, as most of the Felix brothers are either dead or imprisoned, but it is still active in Baja California and the southwestern United States, and is currently being run by Eradina Arellano Felix. Number 4. Juarez Cartel.
Nobody is safe in this city.
Like the Jalisco New Generation, the Juarez Cartel is known for its horrific acts of violence, often displayed in public as a form of intimidation.
You come anywhere near me, my family, or Ruth again, the next time you see your son, he's gonna be hanging from a bridge in Juarez. You got that?
This has made the Juarez Cartel one of the most feared organizations in Mexico, despite its loss in power since the death of leader Amaro Carrillo Fuentes in 1997. It's currently run by Juan Pablo Ledesma, with Mexican authorities offering a bounty of $2.5 million for information leading to his capture. The cartel has a strong presence in the city of Ciudad Juarez. Its close proximity to the border has allowed the organization to spread into the southern United States. Number 3. Los Zetas. When it comes to violent drug cartels, it doesn't get much worse than Los Zetas.
The Zetas target not just rival gang members, they also murder the most innocent of victims.
The founders were deserters from the Mexican army who worked as enforcers for the Gulf Cartel before forming their own gang in 2010. Aside from drug trafficking, the cartel is behind a slew of violent activities, including assassinations, kidnappings, and arson.
Los Zetas have used their resources to control Mexico for years. Recently, they've expanded their reach into the United States.
Their control extends through much of Mexico, and they are allied with many influential organizations around the globe, including the aforementioned Ndrangheta and various cartels like Tijuana and Juarez. Los Zetas is heavily involved in Mexico's oil trade and has a hand in the distribution of fentanyl, and thus the ongoing opioid crisis. Number 2. Gulf Cartel. Over its long history, the Gulf Cartel has built up considerable wealth and power.
With the Gulf Cartel, we have these families that are really entrenched in the community. They really are related to many, many people in the community, and that gives them kind of a wide support base. And so it's also hard to really kind of root them out.
The cartel was created back in the 1930s by smuggler Juan Nepomuceno Guerra, who transported alcohol across the Mexico-American border during Prohibition. His nephew, Juan Garcia Abrego, eventually took control of the Gulf Cartel and shifted its focus to the trafficking of narcotics.
The Gulf Cartel was shifting marijuana, cocaine, and heroin through Texas to across the United States. The Gulf Cartel was onto a good thing, but it was about to get a whole lot better with the North American Free Trade Agreement.
Not only has it succeeded wildly in that regard, but it has extended its reach throughout much of the globe. With operations in Asia and Africa, the Gulf Cartel is one of the most prolific and influential criminal organizations in the world. Number 1. Sinaloa Cartel. The Sinaloa Cartel is the most powerful drug trafficking syndicate in the world.
Joaquin El Chapo Guzman led the Sinaloa Cartel from a small trafficking outfit to one of the most profitable crime syndicates in the world. He was extradited to the United States in 2017 and sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. But the Sinaloa Cartel still dominates the North American drug market.
Like the Tijuana and Juarez cartels, Sinaloa was born out of the disintegration of Guadalajara. The organization is heavily involved in the global drug market and is primarily responsible for the distribution of fentanyl throughout the world.
Unlike heroin, cocaine, or marijuana, fentanyl doesn't need farmland, or water, or sunshine. It can all be made in an underworld lab like this by a handful of cartel chemists.
It is currently being run by Ismael El Mayo Zambada, who has never been arrested and is wanted for $15 million. The current run of the Sinaloa cartel is analogous to the glory days of the Medellin cartel, and that is truly saying something.
Many police officers have died fighting the cartels, but the traffickers have co-opted parts of the state. You never know who you're dealing with. For Mexicans, that's another reason the drugs war is so dangerous.
Okay, we're going to end things today with a look at some of the most violent and notorious gangs from around the world that are still in operation.
Hell's Angels begin to decorate their bodies with elaborate tattoos, a secret language of signs and symbols.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're examining 10 notorious gangs that are still active.
This gang took over my heart. I would attack even my own mother.
For this list, we'll be looking at the most violent and notorious gangs from around the world that are still operating as of 2022. We will also be including organized crime. Which of these gangs scares you the most? Trinitarios.
Their trademark weapon is deadly.
Trinitarios know how to work with machetes and fight with them. They will just cut your hand and that's it.
Situated between Queens and the Bronx and lying in the middle of the East River is a notorious prison called Rikers Island. It was here in 1993 that the Dominican-American gang the Trinitarios was established. Two inmates, Leonidas Sierra and Julio Marin, formed the gang while serving time for homicide, and it became the first Latino gang to be started in New York City.
Started this group with the same name as the founding fathers of the Dominican Republic, the Trinitarios.
Known for their wielding of machetes, Trinitarios are heavily embedded in the illegal drug business. The gang rose to national prominence in June of 2018 when a large group of members chased and killed teenager Lisandro Guzman Feliz, falsely believing he was a member of a rival gang.
His dream was to be a detective since 5 years old.
Public Enemy Number 1. The California-based gang Public Enemy Number 1 was formed back in 1986, having emerged out of the state's hardcore punk culture.
They call themselves Public Enemy Number 1, or P9, and investigators warn this group, learning from the mistakes of other white supremacist gangs, are emerging as a public threat.
The gang is currently active throughout California, with their presence being heavily felt in the Orange County area of Los Angeles. The group is quite small, only consisting of a few hundred members, but that hasn't made them any less notorious. Public Enemy Number 1 partakes in the usual gang activity, like drug trafficking and burglary, but their main MO is identity theft.
How does it operate?
There's a lot of things that go on. There's drug distribution, murder for hire, furtherance of our political views.
The gang steals valuable personal information through their contacts inside various financial institutions. They also have close alliances with various white nationalist groups, including the Aryan Brotherhood.
You tell me a bit about the white Aryan resistance.
We're interested in one thing, and that's the race issue and the well-being of the white race, or at least the part of the white race that gives a damn.
Barrio Azteca. Also known as Los Aztecas, Barrio Azteca is a Mexican-American gang prominent in the American South. While it was formed in El Paso, Barrio Azteca is now spread throughout the states of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona.
Their hand signs is usually the 2 and the 1.
anything having to do with the 21 just to indicate the BA.
Unlike some other gangs on this list, Barrio Azteca also spans multiple countries, with a heavy presence in Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. This location is paramount as the gang is heavily involved in the cross-border drug trade. With thousands of members, Barrio Azteca is a major player in the Mexican drug war and rivals the Sinaloa cartel. The gang is incredibly violent, having carried out numerous large-scale killings and even targeting U.S. consulates.
12 years after the murders of a U.S. consulate employee, Leslie Enriquez, her husband, Arthur Redelves, and the husband of another U.S. consulate employee, Jorge Salcedo Cisneros, the gunmen are now sentenced to life in prison.
The Irish Mob. Having been around since the late 1800s, the Irish mob has become a mainstay of American culture throughout the years. Being a popular subject of gangster films like On the Waterfront, Black Mass, and The Departed, many people have heard of the group and are aware of their illicit activities.
We made money any way there was. I mean, from stolen goods to extortion to drugs to gambling, loan sharking, anything like that.
While the mob has roots all across Ireland and the United States, it is most famously associated with the city of Boston. It's here where the Irish mob war of the 60s took place, and it's where both the Winter Hill Gang and famous crime boss Whitey Bulger were situated.
The war lasts from 1969 to 72. At first, it's Knee's gang who are on the receiving end, dodging Bulger's bullets in a deadly game of cat and mouse.
Bulger was convicted of crimes ranging from homicide to money laundering and was given 2 life sentences in 2013.
3 men have been indicted in the prison death of convicted gangster James Whitey Bulger.
The Crips. There's one major name in street gangs, and that's the Crips. Based largely in Southern California, the Crips are the lifelong rivals of the Bloods and are notable for their use of blue clothing.
Over the past 20 years alone in LA County, there's been over 15,000 gang-related deaths.
Like the Irish mob, the Crips have become mainstays in popular culture throughout the years and have been linked to many high-profile crimes. A founder, Stanley Williams, was sentenced to death. Member Tyquan Cox helped perpetrate a mass homicide in 1984. And members Orlando Anderson and Dwayne Davis remain the prime suspects in the killing of Tupac.
Shortly after 11 p.m., Kading says Anderson and his crew exacted their revenge.
With such notable publicity and membership as high as 35,000, the Crips are easily one of the most notorious gangs in America.
They were totally disconnected and disenfranchised. They're like a planet out of orbit.
Hell's Angels.
They've been described as a marauding cavalry, riding, raiding, and boasting that no police force can break up their motorcycle fraternity.
Founded back in 1948, the Hells Angels have grown to become one of the most notable motorcycle clubs in the world. Gangs of this variety, including the Hells Angels and the Mongols, have long been subjected to close scrutiny by law enforcement.
The 1% patch is the badge of honor, the mark of the outlaw who is proud not to be a part of the AMA's 99% of good bikers.
In fact, the Netherlands has banned the Hells Angels outright, and the United States Department of Justice believes that they are involved in organized crime. Regardless of their official status, the Hells Angels have been involved in many violent and noteworthy incidents throughout the years, including the killing of Meredith Hunter at the Altamont Free Concert in 1969.
Mick Jagger sings Sympathy for the Devil, then all hell breaks loose.
They may also have ties with organized crime in New York, including the famous Gambino and Genovese crime families. The Aryan Brotherhood. Dating back to the mid-60s and born out of San Quentin, the Aryan Brotherhood is perhaps the most well-known prison gang in American history.
I think the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas today is arguably the most violent white supremacist prison gang out there.
A white nationalist organization, the Aryan Brotherhood consists of violent neo-Nazis who partake in widespread criminal activity.
The Aryan Brotherhood remains an exclusive crew. Only the most cunning and ruthless convicts may enter the brand's privileged ranks.
They are perhaps most famous for conducting acts of prison violence. In fact, the FBI claimed in 1992 that a quarter of all prison killings came at the hands of the Aryan Brotherhood. It said that in order to join the gang, one must commit an assault or murder. But their activities certainly aren't limited to the penal system, and the Aryan Brotherhood is considered an extremely dangerous and prolific organization.
There's no out, and you really just have to come to the point where you're man enough to actually just take a stand on what you want to do with your future.
And what happens if they find you?
Well, that could be a pretty bad situation for everybody involved.
The Latin Kings. With membership nearing 50,000, the Latin Kings is one of the largest Hispanic and Latino gangs in the world.
A violent gang that turned the city into a war zone.
Like the Aryan Brotherhood, they operate both in and out of the prison system, and their spread reaches from North America to Europe. The The Latin Kings started as a social movement back in the mid-50s to protect Latinos from violent racial discrimination, but it quickly devolved into a street gang.
Just took off like wildfire, and quite frankly, we weren't prepared for it.
Members follow an ideological religion called Kingism and have been involved in numerous crimes throughout the United States.
Gang violence, everything. I got shot right over here, right in this area right here. I got shot. People try to take me down. Nobody could take me down.
The founder of the gang's New York chapter, Luis Felipe, was found guilty of ordering hits from prison and sent to a supermax called ADX Florence, where he is serving time alongside terrorists. Yakuza. This term is not actually the name of the syndicate itself, but the title of its members, much like our use of the word gangster. The gang consists of many internal organizations, with the largest being Yamaguchi Gumi. As for the syndicate's name, the Yakuza call themselves Ninkyo Dantai, meaning chivalrous organizations. The police see it quite differently, and their title Boryokudan means violent groups.
表面に出ている数字っていうのはあくまでも公表数字。しかし水面下で暗躍している数字っていうのは1万から2万違うと思います。
Easily Japan's most famous and notorious crime syndicate, Yakuza have long enjoyed prominence in pop culture, featuring heavily in the likes of video games and film. It was founded back in the 17th century and is about 12,000 members strong, which is a far cry from the organization's heyday in the 1960s.
俺は偉いんだみたいな感じで歩いてたんですけど、今は全然怖いと思ってません。
The Sicilian Mafia. Hailing from the Italian island of Sicily, the Sicilian Mafia is perhaps the most famous organized crime syndicate in the entire world.
Sicilians have been emigrating to America for 100 years, but many of their descendants kept strong links with their homeland.
The gang is still active in western Sicily and is composed of over 5,000 members. The Mafia earns money through a wide variety of illicit activities, including, but certainly not limited to, protection rackets, smuggling, and contract rigging. The Sicilian Mafia is also widely noted for its intimidation tactics, and it has garnered a fierce reputation for being brutally violent and confrontational.
The Sicilian Mafia always claimed they adhered to a code of honor, murdering only when necessary, and avoiding the killing of innocents, women and children. But Reina shunned these old guard rules.
Between the original Sicilian iteration and its popular American offshoot, the Mafia is the final name in notorious gangs.
There was a lot of friction I found between the American Mafia and the Sicilians, even though they were married up into one family.